I need to tell you something I've never told anyone in full. Not my parents, not my wife, not even the therapist I saw for 8 months after everything fell apart. I've told pieces of it, fragments that I could pass off as bad dreams or a childhood overreaction, but never the whole thing, start to finish, the way it actually happened. I'm telling it now because I think enough time has passed, because I moved away from that house 15 years ago and I still can't sleep with the curtains open. Because last spring my sister called to tell me she'd driven past the old neighborhood, and she mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that the woods behind our old property had been cleared. Developers came through. They put up a subdivision, 32 houses where those trees used to be. And when she said that, I didn't feel relieved, I felt sick, because whatever was in those woods didn't need trees, it needed proximity, and now it has 32 new neighbors. So, let me start from the beginning. We moved to the house when I was 11 years old. My parents had finally saved enough for something with a yard, and the place on Creekside Lane checked every box. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, good school district, and yes, woods. A full acre dense forest abutting our back fence. My mother called it private. My father called it character. I called it the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. For the first few weeks, those woods were paradise. My younger sister Maddie and I spent every afternoon in there, building forts out of fallen branches, following the creek that cut through the eastern edge, cataloging every weird bug and mushroom we found. We named the tallest oak the Giant. We had a rope swing. We were kids, and the woods were ours, and everything was fine. The first strange thing happened in late September of that year. I'm putting that out there now because I don't want you to think this story builds slowly from nothing. There were signs early, we just didn't read them correctly. I was in the woods alone. Maddie had gone inside for lunch, and I found a circle. Not a fairy ring of mushrooms, though there were some of those too. This was a circle of stones, river stones, the smooth gray kind you find at creek beds. They were arranged carefully, deliberately, in a ring about 6 feet across. In the center of the ring, the ground was scorched black. But here's the thing that bothered me even then, even at 11. There was no ash. No remnants of wood or paper or anything that had burned, just the blackened earth, dark and clean, like whatever had happened there had consumed itself completely. I told my dad. He said someone had probably made a campfire. I told him there was no ash. He said the rain had probably washed it away. It hadn't rained in 2 weeks. The first time I saw it was in November. I say it because I genuinely don't know what else to call it. I've run through every rational explanation over the years. A neighbor in a dark coat, a deer standing on its hind legs, or trick of the light through the trees, and none of them hold up against what I actually saw. It was late afternoon, maybe 4:30. The sun sets early in November, and the woods go dark fast. I was at the back fence, not even in the trees, just standing at the edge of our yard, watching the light go gold through the branches. It was the kind of moment that feels almost cinematic, still and cold and beautiful. And then something moved, deep in the trees, too far back to see clearly. Maybe 60 or 70 feet from the fence line. It was tall, That's the first thing I registered. Tall and thin, standing completely still between two trees. I remember thinking it looked like a third tree at first, just a dark vertical shape. But trees don't turn their heads. It turned its head toward me, slowly. And I know how this sounds, I know, but I'm telling you exactly what I saw. It was too far away and too dark for me to see a face, but the shape of the movement, the way that long silhouette rotated at the top, it was looking at me. I went inside. I didn't run. I was too scared to run, which is its own kind of terrifying. I walked backwards across the yard, watching it the whole way, and it didn't move again. It just stood there. It was still standing there when I closed the back door and locked it. December was quiet. January, too. By February, I'd half convinced myself that I'd manufactured the whole thing out of shadow and an overactive imagination. We'd gotten a dog, a big yellow lab named Biscuit, and somehow having him around made the yard feel safer. He loved the woods. He'd tear through the fence gate and vanish into the trees for an hour at a time, chasing squirrels or deer or whatever dogs chase, until he stopped. It was subtle at first. He'd get to the fence and slow down, sniff the air, then turn around and come back to the porch. My mom thought he'd gotten spooked by a coyote. My dad thought maybe he'd found a skunk once and learned his lesson. But it happened every single time after a certain point in February. He would not go into those woods. He'd press himself against my legs and shake if I tried to lead him through the gate. Animals know things. I didn't understand that then the way I do now. The night that broke me happened in March. I was 12 by then, almost 13. It was a school night. I woke up at somewhere around 2 in the morning, and I didn't know why at first. Just awake, alert, the way you get when a sound has pulled you out of sleep but finished before your conscious mind could catch it. My bedroom window faced the backyard. I didn't want to look out the window. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, and I was aware with every cell in my body that I did not want to look out that window. That specific, sourceless dread that has no rational explanation, the kind that feels like a warning. I looked out the window. The yard was lit by a half moon, bright enough to see clearly, dark enough to distort shapes. The lawn was empty. The fence at the back was a straight, dark line. The tree line behind it was solid and still. And then I saw the lights. 2 of them, low to the ground. No, not to the ground, at about eye height if the thing they belonged to were standing just inside the tree line. 2 pale points of light, steady, unblinking, separated by the distance of a human face. They were looking at the house. They were looking at my window. I dropped below the sill. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, heart hammering, and I did not look again. I sat there until my alarm went off at 6:30. I don't know if I slept. I don't think I did. In the morning, I went out to the fence. I don't know why. Compulsion, maybe. Or the part of you that presses on a bruise. The ground just inside the tree line was soft from the previous week's rain, and there were marks in the mud. Not footprints, not exactly. The impression was too long, too narrow, the weight distributed wrong for any person I could imagine. But something had stood there. Something had stood in that spot and faced the house for God knows how long in the dark. I'll skip forward now. because the months between that March night and the following summer were more of the same. Glimpses, sounds, the dog refusing the fence, lights in the trees, and the full account would take longer than you have patience for, and longer than I have courage. What happened in July is the part I need to tell. Maddie was 9. She'd been sleeping badly, and none of us knew why. She said she kept having dreams about the woods, but she wouldn't describe them. She'd just say they were about the woods, and then she'd change the subject. My parents attributed it to too much TV, too much sugar, the heat. One afternoon in mid-July, Maddie didn't come in for dinner. We searched the house, the yard, the neighborhood. My dad walked the fence line 3 times. My mother called every family within 2 blocks. After 40 minutes, with daylight starting to thin, my father went into the woods. He found her at the stone circle. She was sitting cross-legged in the center of the scorched earth, eyes open but unfocused, like someone watching a movie only she could see. When my dad touched her shoulder, she screamed. Not in fear, he said later, more like sudden surprise, like being woken from a dream. She said she didn't remember walking into the woods. She said one minute she was in the backyard, and then she was there. She said someone had been talking to her. She wouldn't say who. We moved out 4 months later. My parents told everyone it was for work reasons. It wasn't. The night before the moving truck came, I went to the back fence one last time. The woods were still, quiet, just trees. But Biscuit was with me, and he was shaking. And somewhere deep in the tree line, in the shadow where the light didn't quite reach, something was standing very, very still, watching us leave. I looked up the address a few years ago. The family that bought the house after us stayed for 11 months. The family after them, 8 months. When my sister told me they'd cleared the woods for the subdivision, I asked her one thing. What did the construction crew find when they cleared it? She'd found a brief article in the county paper. Work was briefly delayed after crews discovered a series of stone formations deep in the wood, the origin of which is unknown. The formations were removed. Removed? To where? I think about that a lot. I think about the 32 houses. I think about the families in them, and the children, and the windows that face the yards. If you live somewhere with woods behind your house, I'm not telling you to be afraid. I'm not telling you there's something out there. I'm telling you to watch your animals. I'm telling you to pay attention when the woods go quiet. I'm telling you that old places have long memories, and that some things don't need to be seen to be present. I'm telling you to keep your children close. And if you find a ring of stones in the trees, smooth gray stones, no ash, blackened earth in the center, walk away. Don't go back. And whatever you do, don't let 'em know your name. I didn't hear her approach. That's the part that stays with me, that by the time I knew she was there, she'd already been watching for a long time. It was the second weekend of October, and I'd driven 4 hours north to a dispersed camping area in the Ocoee Forest Reserve, the kind of place that doesn't show up on the first page of Google results. No designated sites, no rangers, no cell signal past the 3rd mile marker, just pine trees, red clay soil, and the kind of quiet that feels thick, like something pressing against your ears. I'd been going solo every fall for 3 years. It was my reset, my one annual commitment to being completely unreachable. I parked my truck off a fire road around 4 p.m., gave myself 2 hours of daylight to set up camp. I'd done this enough times that it was almost meditative. Tent stakes, bear canister, kindling, water filter, everything had a sequence. I liked the sequence. By 6:30, I had a fire going and rice boiling on my camp stove. The tree line around me was going dark fast, the sky turning that deep bruised orange right before it drops to black. I ate slowly, listened to nothing in particular. A woodpecker somewhere to the east, wind moving through the upper canopy, the pop of resin in the fire. I was fine. I was completely fine. The first thing I noticed, and I almost didn't, was the smell. Wood smoke, faint but distinct. Not from my fire, which was burning clean pine. This was something denser, green wood maybe, or wet bark. It drifted in from the northwest and was gone within a minute. I told myself there was another camper somewhere further up the ridge. Reasonable, totally reasonable. I went to bed around 9:30. I'm a light sleeper outdoors, always have been, so I heard everything. Owls, a raccoon nosing around the bear canister, wind, and sometime around 1 a.m., something that sounded like footsteps on dry leaves, slow, uneven, pausing. I lay still inside my sleeping bag and listened. It stopped after maybe 20 seconds. Could have been a deer. I told myself it was a deer, and I went back to sleep. Morning was clean and cold, 38 degrees when I checked my thermometer at 7 a.m. I made coffee and walked the perimeter of my little clearing the way I always do, just a habit, checking the ground around the camp. That's when I saw the boot print, a single impression in a patch of soft clay near the northwest edge of the trees. Adult-sized, narrow, no tread pattern like a flat-soled boot or moccasin. It was pointing directly toward my tent. I stood there for a moment looking at it. Then I looked up into the tree line. Nothing. I told myself the same things you'd tell yourself. Hiker passed through, probably hours before I arrived. The direction of the print meant nothing. I broke camp 2 hours later than planned and hiked the north trail instead of the south loop I'd mapped. I wanted to move. The sitting had started to feel wrong. I saw her at 11:14 a.m. I know the time because I just checked my watch thinking about turning back. The trail had gone narrower than expected, hemmed in on both sides by laurel bushes, and I was getting that low-grade unease that makes experienced hikers turn around. She was standing in the trail about 40 meters ahead of me, just standing, facing me. She was older, maybe 60, maybe older, with short gray hair and a dark green jacket. No pack, no hiking poles, no water bottle that I could see. She was wearing those flat-soled boots. Her hands were at her sides. I raised one hand in the trail greeting, the standard single wave, and said, "Morning." She didn't respond, didn't move. I kept walking toward her, because what else do you do? As I got closer, I could see her face more clearly. She wasn't looking at me exactly. Her eyes were slightly off, not at my face, but at my chest or my pack, somewhere in that direction. When I was maybe 15 meters away, I stopped and said, "Beautiful morning, huh?" She said very quietly, "You're in my spot." I almost laughed. "Sorry?" "That's my spot," she said, "where you set up." I looked at her for a moment. "There's no reservation system out here," I said, as gently as I could. "Dispersed camping, free use. I didn't know anyone." "I know you didn't know," she said. Then she stepped off the trail into the laurel bushes and was gone. I stood there for probably 10 seconds. Then I walked to the spot where she'd stepped off. There was nothing. No path, no opening, no sign of movement in the brush. I pushed in a few feet and found only dense undergrowth with no passage through it. I went back to my campsite. I don't fully know why. Partly to make sure my gear was still there, partly because I needed to see the place again in daylight with what I now knew. Everything was where I'd left it. Pack against the tree, stove packed and latched, bear canister upright. But my camp chair, the small folding one I always set facing the fire ring, was facing a different direction. I'd set it facing east. Habit. I always face east in the morning. It was facing northwest, toward the tree line, toward where the boot print had been. I packed in 11 minutes. I've timed faster departures before, but not many. I drove back to the highway without stopping. When I hit cell service around mile marker 7, I pulled over and sat in the truck for a few minutes with the engine running. I told myself there were explanations. The chair could have been moved by wind, though it was aluminum and weighted, and the morning hadn't been that windy. The woman could have been a local with genuine attachment to the area. Some people develop that, especially older, solitary types. She could have walked in from a different trail than I'd seen. She could have been in my campsite while I slept. I don't know when she moved the chair. That's the part I can't assign a comfortable explanation to. I broke camp at 9 a.m. I left the site at 9 a.m. I saw her on the trail at 11:14 a.m., 2 miles north of camp, which means the chair was moved either the night before while I was sleeping inside the tent or in those 2 hours when I was on the trail and the campsite was empty, which would mean she had been watching me leave, walk to the site, move the chair, and then somehow arrived on the trail ahead of me. Neither of those is an explanation. They're just sequences of events that don't resolve into anything clean. I looked up the forest reserve when I got home. Okoye is technically open dispersed camping, no registration, no records. I found a post on a hiking forum from 4 years ago, a man describing a solo trip there. He wrote about a woman he'd seen standing at the edge of his campsite at dusk, older, short gray hair. He'd assumed she was another camper. He wrote, "She just watched me for a while and then walked into the trees. I assumed she had a site nearby. In the morning I checked and there was no other camp anywhere within a quarter mile. I still don't know where she came from or where she went." The post had one reply. It said, "Same woman, same spot, don't go back." I haven't. If this story felt familiar, if something about it reminded you of a place or a person or a moment you've tried not to think about, I'd leave it there. Some things don't need to be explained to leave a mark. I drove out there late. Gravel road, rain coming down steady but not hard. My truck's headlights barely cut through the trees. I parked at the trailhead around midnight, grabbed my pack and hiked in about 20 minutes to a flat spot by a dry creek. Set up the tent quick, stakes in, rain fly tight, small fire going. Made coffee on the stove, sat on a log, watched the flames. Felt good to be out, quiet. No signal on my phone, which was the point. Around 1-something, I zipped into the sleeping bag, headlamp off, dark like you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I woke up because something was moving. Not wind, not an animal. A low thump, 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 like bare feet hitting dirt in a slow jog. It started far off, then got closer, circled the tent once, twice, stopped right outside. I lay there frozen, eyes wide in the dark. Heard breathing, more than one person. Then this wet, excited laugh. Multiple voices. Not words I could make out, just this hungry sound. He stayed there maybe 2 minutes. Then the footsteps backed off. Laughter faded into the trees. I didn't move, didn't breathe right for a long time. Eventually reached for the knife clipped inside the tent, held it against my chest. Nothing else happened. I stayed awake till gray light started coming through the nylon. Morning, I unzipped slow, stepped out. Fire was dead ash. My coffee mug was still on the log where I left it, but now it was packed full of fresh pine needles, like someone had taken the time to stuff it. I looked around, no footprints. The ground was too dry, maybe, or they were careful. I didn't like it. Packed everything fast, decided to hike out early. Shouldered the pack, started down the trail. Half a mile in, I heard it again. Thump, 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 behind me. Multiple sets this time, matching my pace exactly. I stopped, turned around. Nothing on the trail, just pines and shadows. I started walking faster. The footsteps sped up, same rhythm. I broke into a jog. They jogged. I ran flat out, branches whipping my face, pack slamming my back, breath burning. I burst into a little clearing. Old fire ring, rusted canteen half buried. Stopped, hands on knees, sucking air. Silence. Then a branch snapped hard to my left. I spun. A guy stood 30 feet away, tall, shirtless, skin smeared with mud and ash, long, matted hair, holding a long stick sharpened to a point, eyes locked on me, smiling with dark teeth. Another one stepped out from the right, same look, wild, silent. A third from behind, 3 of them, moving slow, circling. I backed up till my shoulders hit a tree. "I'm leaving," I said, voice cracked. "Just let me go." No answer. They kept closing the gap. I bolted, straight off trail, crashing through brush. They followed, feet pounding right behind me, close enough I could hear their breathing. I tripped on a root, went down hard. Pack slammed my spine. I rolled, scrambled up, knife out. One of them lunged, stick raised. I swung, blade caught the stick, knocked it wide. He stumbled, snarled. I ran again. Down a slope, through thick stuff, hit the creek, shallow, fast, splashed across, water to my knees, climbed the far bank. Looked back. They stopped at the water's edge, just staring. One raised his stick like some kind of wave. Then they turned and melted back into the trees. I didn't stop, kept moving till I hit the gravel road. Truck was still there. I yanked the door, threw the pack in, locked myself inside, started the engine, peeled out, spraying stones. Checked the mirror. Nothing. But in the side mirror, I saw one of them standing at the trailhead, just watching the truck disappear down the road. I drove, hands shaking on the wheel. Didn't stop till I hit pavement. Phone got signal. A text came through from an unknown number. "Next time, bring more coffee." I stared at it a long second, deleted the message, kept driving. I haven't gone back to Black Ridge, haven't camped alone since. Sometimes when I'm out driving at night, I check my mirrors more than I should, and I still wake up hearing that thump, thump, thump in my head, like they're still out there, waiting for me to come back.